How is everyone tonight? Oh, I'm glad to hear that. We have about 1 minute to go, so chat for that one minute, and then we'll start right up. All right, welcome everyone. Glad to have you here for our work session. I'll start off by, first of all, asking who's here in Concord 101? Wow. Are you guys learning a lot? All of you? Yeah, okay.
And they came to the meeting where you actually learn the most. If you come to the real meeting, you don't hear as much. So I commend you for coming to the work session. Hopefully the word's out.
That is a true statement that we actually cover all the topics in detail. Staff has prepared it, then they present it to us, and then we have our final discussion and vote on Thursday night. So you hit the right time, and we should be gone in 5 to 6 hours. I think that'd be fine. No problem.
Hope you brought a sandwich.
Yeah, hope you brought a sandwich. Okay. First of all, we're going to start off. We have we received the annual report from the Concord United in our work session.
Jamae, I'll ask you to come forward. I'm not sure who all is going to be here presenting tonight, so I'll allow you to introduce it, and then we'll go from there.
Happy to. Good afternoon, Mayor, Mr. Payne, Ms. Kolchinski, and members of council. The Concord United Committee has been hard at work for the past 2 years, and this wraps up their Year 2 report, mostly focused on their work with HR, police, and fire, with some mentions of their Year 1 work with housing and transit. Our co-chairs are here to present today, so we have Ms. Ann Fleming, and then others may arrive over the next few minutes. They'll go over briefly what it is, again, that they learned, mainly their recommendations, and then hope to have another conversation where they go into more detail, okay? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor Dush and Council. I am Ann Fleming. I am one of the outgoing chairs for the Concord United Committee. So my other co-chairs, Robert Kirk and Bertram Hinton, they're on their way. But I will go ahead and proceed with the, oh, here he is. Hey, come on, buddy.
Nice cue right there. Good job.
Okay. And we had developed a format that we would like to present, so I'll wait on him if that's okay.
Yep, that'd be great.
I just started.
Good afternoon, distinguished council members. Apologize for the slight delay. It is great to be here on behalf of the Concord United Committee for our second annual report on the CUC, Committee for Unified Concord United Committee for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Thank y'all so much for the time crafted out to hear the results of our year. I'm Robert Kirk. I'm one of 3 co-chairs for the CUC. And you'll see 4 people today. Higher math, so stay with me. As y'all well know, Ann Fleming will be stepping down from co-chair responsibilities this year, but she's agreed to stay on the committee. So we're still keeping her brain power with us, but she won't be co-chairing. We'll be hearing from Marie Austin, who was our council, our committee secretary. She's fitting up to be co-chair position next year. So you'll be hearing from 4 of us and Bishop will be with us a little bit later on, time allowing. It has been an interesting year for us. The Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. It has been a fun year for us. And I say it's been challenging in some regards because we've had a little bit of white water. We've had the standard 1/3 of our committee rolling off as part of any standing committee, bringing on 1/3 of our new folks on board. We've had Ms. Sellers, if you recall, last summer, stepped away to take a national position using her skill sets with the diversity, equity, inclusion. And we had the wonderful addition of Ms. Jamae Brown, who's been phenomenal in putting starch in our underwear, so to speak. She's given us some good rigor, some good framework for understanding the language of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we've been delighted by her phenomenal work with us, giving structure. We had a good time with the book entitled Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, by Isabel Wilkerson. And they really helped us kind of get a common language around what we're doing. And I like the way that the first paragraph of the introduction of our report encapsulate, we quote her, Wilkerson says, "People show a greater sense of joint responsibility to one another when they see their fellow citizens as like themselves. Societies can be more magnanimous when people perceive themselves, got an alert here, Amber Alert, perceive themselves as having an equal stake in the lives of their fellow citizens." So indeed, as we kind of round out year 2 with this committee, we're delighted that we've had some amazing people around the table, listening ears, some great departmental reports. We'll be hearing more about them in a little bit, and we're delighted where we have been. Kind of wrapping up, I'm kind of the mop-up team in regards of last year. We kind of left you hanging on the reports on the transit summary. And if you're following the report, we're on page 5. Basically, 4 quick transit recommendations kind of carry over from last year, which came after our first annual report. The transit recommendations were to make transit a key consideration by requesting departmental input as affordable housing is planned and developed prior to build. Oftentimes, we find a great location, great investors, we build a place and have affordable housing, but there's no public transit to get the population to where they need to be to generate revenue or support, strengthen our economy. So bring in transit early on instead of being in a tail chase of how do we get people from their apartment to Amazon. Procurement of microbuses for low-use stops, as reflected by the data. We saw several places where this huge bus was going places that a minivan could easily do more cheaply and on an increased cycle. Ask Concord businesses to consider providing transit options where currently there are gaps in availability. And 4th, Rider Transit and CCTS merged to open funding availability to better serve our community. So those are kind of the four key takeaways from our engagement with the transit department. We good? Who's next? Ms. Fleming, take it up.
Yes, we also heard from Police Chief Gasik, and he provided us a lot of information regarding the Concord Police Department. We wanted to focus on recruitment. So our recommendations surrounding the Concord Police Department are as follows. I won't read them word for word. I don't want to insult your intelligence on that, but I'll just highlight key points. So for the policing recommendations, we recommend to establish a diverse recruitment team with equal representation of race, ethnicity, and gender. We recommend the ideas for a truly diverse team for these recruitment efforts might include, but not limited to, ideas such as potential recommendation for promotion, mentorship, shepherding that comprehensively includes both the eligibility component along with active encouragement, as well as transparency on how promotions are granted, will also potentially help with retention. Another recommendation we have is to extend the diverse recruitment team into elementary, middle, and high schools, such as career day efforts to inform our youth about law enforcement and encourage them to participate in the Police, Youth, and Cadet Academy. Implement the addition of a mental health option for emergency call needs. establish readily available access to all traffic and community engagement stops with the citizens of Concord. That information will be easily accessible to all citizens on the city website. The need for traffic data availability regarding blue light stops and contact stops, and the outcome of these stops for at least 3 to 5 years for benchmarking purposes. Let's see. And we also listed several of the questions that we had that we did not receive information for to continue our recommendation. So those are listed point 8, A through H in the report on page 6.
And are you getting that information? I mean, is it that the information you have not gotten, are you,
We asked for it, but we never received it.
do we know what that is so we can make sure we get that for you?
They're listed on page 6.
Okay, got
Under
it.
8,
Yes, ma'am.
A through H. So those
Okay.
are all the data that we requested, but we didn't receive. So we made our recommendations based on that.
Okay. We'll try to, yeah.
Hi, I'm Lumry Austin Stripling. I currently serve as the secretary and transitioning into backfilling Ann's role. So what I wanted to cover was the human resources summary. One of the highest takeaways that we had in that particular section was that there's a lot of demographic data that's locked up in paper records. And so we felt like the city could really benefit from digitizing that information so that we could then go into that data and really analyze that at a deeper level. Additionally, for the public-facing website, we were recommending that there's some additional contact information. Right now on the HR section of the site, there's not a direct contact listed for the personnel. Additionally, tracking demographic data at a little bit deeper dive level. And we thought that potentially after some of the meetings that we had, there might be some information that you could benefit from analyzing with the exit interviews. And so that was another recommendation that we had. The fire department was incredibly accommodating. They were very, very detailed in their information that was provided. For those recommendations, we also recommended a diverse recruitment team to be established there for race, ethnicity, and gender. Additional recommendation was to ensure that personal bias was not a perceived barrier in the application process. And a lot of the discussion centered around average response times. We were recommending that we get more of a detailed response time by community so that we could take a deeper look at whether or not there were potential inequities there. And I'll turn it back over to Robert.
Thank you. I think the kind of landing the plane, then we'll certainly open up for questions, kind of to your point. It has been a substantive year. A lot of good reporting. The department heads have stepped up and given great overviews. And if you'll recall the structures, we meet monthly as a full body of the CUC, and then we parachute down to a smaller group on like a Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. So if you really want to play in the arena, you've got to give up of your time. So we do a 1 hour Zoom call with subcommittees of people that are very, very interested in the topics discovered, doing a deeper dive into the data. And so you've got kind of the macro, the micro, then we report back to the macro. And we kind of kick that can down the road and if we need further information. So the department heads have been very, very forthcoming. Some of the data that we have asked for, to your point, Mr. King, is that it's simply not available because you've got to go through file rooms twice the size of this room, paper files. Good luck finding anything. So the paucity of data has really been an impediment to a deep data dive. You know, that which is available, that which is accessible, without involving a lot of manpower. We want to be respectful of the different departments. Some of the data just doesn't exist, or if it exists, good luck finding it among 2,000 files. So a strong recommendation, if we can, to eat the elephant one bite at a time, try to engage in some kind of digitizing of decades of good files, because we don't know some of these questions. And so kind of the punchline, if you take a look at kind of the the last paragraph, and let me read this because it is important. In light of this paucity of comprehensive data, the determination of systemic bias or racial inequity extant in the City of Concord's policy and procedures pertaining to these respective departments is inconclusive. You know, that which we've got, we love it. There's a lot of stuff that's out there that we can't honestly say it exists or it doesn't exist. So that's kind of a neutral position. We'll play Switzerland for a little bit, but that's where we're coming from on that. So we'll entertain questions. Thank you for your time.
Questions from council?
I don't have necessarily questions, but just comments. And first of all, thank you all for the work that you all are doing and that you've done. I understand it is a volunteer position. You're not getting compensated, but it requires a lot of work. And I have some questions and some concerns, but I will be glad to share those whenever the meeting is held with the three co-chairs. And just some feedback, I'm willing to share that. And please, you know, don't wait until the end of the year if you're not getting the information and the resources that you need, we need to know that. You know, you don't have to wait until the final report. So, again, thank you, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Ms. Stocks.
Yes, ma'am.
Not a question, comment, thank you. I know this is very time consuming. I would like to just propose, because I think last time we had a little bit of, we left you hanging and we didn't have a process. So I'd like to propose that our process be like what we did last time, which was providing this to staff, which was really helpful to kind of have that feedback and then for us to process it a little bit further and then to get back with the co-chairs. So to be able to make sure that we are responsive, I'm assuming that's probably going to be our continued, but just to kind of make sure that we, you know, if you'll let the committee know that we're very grateful for that, and that'll be the plan to make sure that we have the feedback that you need. Awesome.
Bill,
Yes, sir.
I just want to echo Jennifer. We do owe you a response to a very fine report. I like Jennifer's suggestion that we do refer this to staff to get, I mean, you've asked questions about the collection of data. I need to know which of that is legally possible for us to do and which of that is not. I mean, when you talk about you want to see access to exit interviews, you know, what is possible and what is not. So I think you've raised some really good issues with us, but I would love, I think we direct this to Lloyd, to ask staff to do a deep dive into this report, help us to identify issues for which we have capacity to respond, which ones where we do not have the ability for legal or other reasons to respond. But then we as a council need to speak to you with one voice about how we respond to what you do. Because I understand this is to be a dialogue between some very faithful people who are opening our eyes to some very important issues, and we really need to be engaged in that. So thank you for what you're doing. So this is, hopefully, we will not put this on the table and file it in one of those 5 rooms that's this size and never be seen by the light of day. It's like the Ark of the Covenant somewhere is in some government warehouse somewhere, but we have no idea where it is.
May I piggyback on that? Thank you for that, certainly. A kind of a data point. So if I were to ask you, you know, you're an HR person, you're hiring somebody, how many of you would say that asking how old are you, how much of you would say that's probably not a good HR or legal question? Do we have a show of hand? I can ask you how old you are, right?
Right.
But yet, in our application process, guess what it asks? What year did you graduate from high school? Ooh, not did you graduate, yes or no, because the job requires a high school diploma, but what year? I can do math. I got my calculator, I got my Google. If you graduated in 72 or 82, I know how old you are. Ageism, talking about diversity and inclusion. You know, I'm not old, I'm vintage. So questions like that kind of irk me because now you know how old I am. So anyway, those are the kinds of things that we stumble upon that it's buried so deep in an interview question on paper, online, that it screens the applicants for us. And that's a pitfall. Thank you.
I have one question dealing with the data. There's certain areas you did not get the data, and there's certain areas you did, but you need more. If you get more data, do you have a method involved to analyze it?
Thank you for that. We want to be data-informed, not data-driven. Some things just don't exist. I can't tell you trend analysis unless I've gotten and usually we've asked maybe the past 3 years. We've not gone back, owners 5 or 10 years. That's not realistic. But we have, in the past 3 years, the past 2 years, what have been the blue light stops and it's the regular contact stops, right? That's important. Are you stopping me to say, how are you doing? Are you stopping me because your taillight's busted? That's important when we take a look at that kind of demographics. And who are we stopping? What neighborhoods? That's data that should be accessible in a database, but is not. So we can't do data analysis.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Mayor?
Well, yeah, it does, because things that, if you had more data, you could keep going forward, but some you just don't have the data.
Yes, sir.
Right.
That's
Don't
correct.
have
Doesn't
any.
exist.
Right,
Yeah.
doesn't exist,
And I
yeah.
do want to respect the interviews, how much screening can you do? And I'm not going to tell you how to suck eggs. That's, certainly Mr. Payne knows how to do that best legally. So, yeah.
Other questions, council? Yes, sir.
Got several. First, I want to make sure that the process that has been laid out, that you're comfortable with that, but we're just going to do basically what we just did a month or so ago in a more timely way. I would like to ask Valerie and Lloyd, and I'm going to ask some detailed questions. We've got a year's worth of work that's distilled down to 4 pages. And if you're not quite sure what they're after, is that we have some communication instead of just trying to maybe answer a question that's not what, just make sure we understand what we're getting so that we don't get into a loop of answering a question that wasn't really asked. I don't think I'm making sense because you're looking at me like I'm a Martian. So let me ask a couple questions. When you say ask Concord businesses to consider providing transit options, tell me, I don't understand what you're saying there. You want business to provide transit?
Fair question. We kind of wrestled that pig to the ground. So if the public transportation gets you to the gate of Amazon, but it's another 15 minutes drive into a space, what is that company doing to facilitate its own employees that do get public transit? That was specifically the driver for that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want them to take up.
Okay. On the next page, you talk about, on the police, talking about paying through forfeiture money versus allocated funds. Explain, I don't follow that one out. It's number 7 on page 6.
Number 7.
It is our understanding from the brief that the cameras and whatnot were being funded by the paying through forfeiture funds. So the forfeiture funds are there. Then equipment gets purchased for, like, especially for the cameras, body cameras and so forth. So we are asking, do we have to wait for forfeiture funds to come in before that can be funded? If something breaks, is there wherewithal of repairing? So just open-ended question, recommending that it be an allocated budget item versus waiting for the state to do something, or however that comes. Mr. Payne, I don't know.
And this, just wanting to
Yeah,
make
to
sure.
that end, I mean, forfeiture funds are available, so if there were purchases through forfeiture funds, those funds are already setting aside, so we're not waiting on those to come in. And so a lot of times those forfeiture funds are used for items that come up during the budget year that weren't budgeted, but we need them. It would be great to have, would help us do our job on the police side, so we use those forfeiture funds instead of coming back to city council and saying, hey, we'd like a budget amendment and more money to buy these cameras or whatnot. So that's money, non-taxpayer dollars that's already set aside that gives us what I would call opportunity purchases throughout the
The
year.
rainy day funds then comes from that. Okay.
But I think the down and dirty of it is that we're not foregoing what we need. So we're not foregoing what we need. We will spend the money for what we need. Is that what you're saying? It just happens to be cherries on top that we have those forfeiture funds.
That's
Like,
correct.
we wouldn't let the officers not have what they need first without, while we wait on the
That's correct.
forfeiture.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Or
That
this
was
is
not
what I'm
clear.
getting at. If we're not clear what the recommendation is, to have Jemay liaison back to what exactly you're after here, so that we don't answer over. And then one last one on page 8. You say that you have served as an open group for feedback, ideas, and community support. Can you give a couple of specifics where you've actually provided feedback to one of our other, Concord 101, Concord International, Cabarrus Arts?
We have the delight of briefing Concord 101 and Jemay has come and shared extensively, and as a matter of fact, you're looking at a current enrollee, Concord 101. So tonight, after this meeting, I'm going to change clothes and come back to Concord 101. So this CUC has been very active in briefing and engaged with the Concord 101 classes throughout the year. We appreciate the leadership, both past and present. Concord International Festival, we have, what's her name?
Sandra Torres.
Thank you,
Sandra
Sandra Torres, thank you,
Torres
excuse
on
me.
the committee.
Yeah, on the committee, and so whenever, for marketing efforts, Concord 101, CUC rather, gets information, flyers out, and we support the International Festival. So we're engaged throughout. Certainly, Mr. Amos McClory, NAACP, sits on the committee as well, and has shared some of his concerns with us from his 30,000-foot level. So in each of these cases, the Cabarrus Arts Council, for sure, they're asking about, when we had the survey for what needs to be done in terms of engaging the community with the Arts Council, we've been active participants in that. So does that answer your
Yeah,
specific question?
excellent, excellent stuff. I look forward to staff, and we'll move forward. Excellent report. Appreciate everything the committee's done. I think you're really getting your feet on the ground and getting tied in. So excellent, excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Robert, I'm glad that's not the attire required for Concord 101.
Sir?
I'm glad that's not the attire required for Concord 101.
Dress code, dress code.
Dress code.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you
council
very
members.
much.
Appreciate it.
All right, under departmental reports, we will have those two, the downtown streetscape update and the Parks and Rec bond update on Thursday. Public hearings, we have two. So starting off with the number one is consider adopting an ordinance annexing 11.13 acres.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Calling Autumn to come forward and give the staff report for this item to council.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Council, Mr. Payne, and Ms. Kolchinsky. This is an annexation petition for 2976 Zion Church Road. Before I begin, I would like to mention that City Council did review the preliminary application on this property at the November 10th, 2022 regular council meeting, and voted to have the applicant proceed to the final application phase, which includes the voluntary annexation, and that is what is being presented today.
There we go.
So the location is 2976 Zion Church Road, and the applicant is Michael Newman, and he is presenting this application on behalf of Ready Mix of the Carolinas. The current zoning is Cabarrus County General Industrial, and the proposed zoning is City of Concord I-2 conditional, and this will be for a Ready Mix concrete facility.
Oh, thank God I'm not doing that anymore.
Tiny homes are wanting to go, aren't they?
Okay, so here are the existing conditions on my left side, your right, I suppose. You can see this is looking towards Zion Church Road. The parcel to the left there is not included. It's only, you can see starting right here. Well, I can't show you, in front of these trees. And then looking from Zion Road, Zion Church Road to the rear, you can see the industrial park to my right, as well as Americhem. And then there is a residential neighborhood there, that's Autumn Park back there, as well as the parcel towards the back that is owned by Pulte Homes. Here is the current zoning map. Again, I noted that there is that industrial section, that I-2 there. It is surrounded by 2 county parcels, as well as some medium density residential with the county, and then residential with the city. The land use plan, it is industrial employment. This is compatible with the suggested or the proposed I-2 conditional zoning. So that would not need to come back to council if this is approved and goes forward towards planning and zoning. I do want to note at the bottom part of this parcel, it is not on this parcel, the creek that runs along there. It is on the parcel to the south of that. However, it has been mentioned that if this annexation goes through, and the proposed ready-mix concrete facility does go in this area, we will just want to make sure that that creek is protected as we move forward. So your next steps here are to adopt or deny the annexation, and if the annexation is adopted, it will be presented at the November 21st meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. If there are any questions for staff, I'm more than happy to answer those.
Question from council.
Just wanted to ask, we have done our typical notification of annexation for this parcel that we do.
Yes, so
And have we gotten any,
I have not gotten any phone calls. We noticed on September 27th, and the applicant noticed about the project on September 6th. He has not contacted me with anything, and again, no one has called me with any questions, concerns regarding this.
And I may have this confused. We had a ready mix on Zion that we did not allocate sewer about a year ago. Is that this project?
Yes.
And do they have sewer? Am I confused?
No, sir, you're not confused. I didn't want to yell from the audience. So that is correct. Their projection, because it's typically, they have very few employees, and it's 25 gallons per employee, so they're going to fall under the 600 gallons per day and considered a small project. So he can go either way, because I think they already actually have a septic permit from the county, if I'm remembering back several months ago. So I think they can go either way, but they'd either be a small project under 600 or do the septic.
And if we have sewer available, they can install a septic. I thought we wouldn't allow that.
That's the county, I'm trying to think where they're at. If their building is closer than 200, I haven't actually seen his exact site plan, then he would fall under our ordinance once he comes into the city. So the septic was before, I guess, they decided to annex while they have that permit. But yes, you're correct. If his building's closer than 200, then he would be required to connect.
Either way, they've got sewer.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Closer than 200 feet to our sewage, or what is the?
Yes, sir. The way the ordinance reads, it's a required connection if your facility that you're serving is within 200 feet of the sewer main.
Right. Thank you. Any more questions?
I just want to know that they do have that in writing, that if it's 601, that they know that, okay, that's all I want. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Number 2, consider adopting an ordinance amending Article 9, Special Purpose and Overlay Districts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Call on Kevin to come forward. I think this presentation was up just a few minutes ago, so Kevin can go through it now.
Mayor, members of council, Mr. Payne, Ms. Kolchinsky, this item is an approach to reconsider the tiny homes that we worked on several months ago. And what it is, it's actually creating a new zoning district, section 9.14 for the neighborhood infill residential district. So just to give you a little background, if you recall back in February, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended to you that you approve an amendment to the CDO to allow design standards for tiny homes and cottage homes. We brought it to you, these would be by right. We brought it to you. You expressed some concern about allowing those uses by right in certain neighborhoods without neighborhood feedback, and you requested we give you some more options. So in April, we brought that back to you and posed a few, including a special use permit, a zoning overlay, and a site plan control zoning district. We decided during our work session, decided that special use permits aren't particularly good. They don't give a lot of opportunity for feedback from the neighbors, because if it meets the standards of the ordinance, the planning commission would pretty much have to approve it unless the neighbors have expert witnesses, and so on and so forth. And then the zoning overlay, we would have to determine the best place in the city, in a broad sense, to where tiny and cottage homes could go, and then allow them by right. We decided that was not the best way to do it. So we settled on a site plan control zoning district, which would be very similar to a PUD. And again, the new district is called the Neighborhood Infill Residential District. Again, it would be an application filed by the petitioner and reviewed on a case-by-case basis with a noticed public hearing. And it's intended to allow for detached tiny and cottage homes. The way it's set up is if there are housing types in the future that we want to roll into an infill district, we could essentially put the design standards in to do that. And a lot of this are things you saw back in February and March, examples of tiny homes, real-world photos and floor plans of products that had been done in other jurisdictions. And of course, these are tiny homes on foundations and not on wheels. Go back. And this is an example from Kannapolis, which is a 4-unit tiny home development that's gone through construction plan review, which would essentially work under our ordinance also, something like this. Cottage homes, which are a little bit larger than the tiny homes, and but essentially a similar type of use. And so, just to go back over the definitions and the basics, when we talked to you before, there were really not a lot of issues with how things were, the design standards, how things were set up, and how that worked. It was more an issue of how they were approved. So again, these would be permissible only with a site plan control zoning district, and we've set it up in the urban neighborhood land use designation. That's the part of the city where residential compact zoning is most prevalent, and so that's where your higher density zonings are going to be. The projects would be a minimum of 4 dwelling units, a maximum of 18 per project. The developments could either be subdivided with individual units and lots for sale, or they could be allowed on one overall parcel. And the overall parcel size, which would have to have 50 feet of street frontage, tiny homes a minimum of 10,000 square feet of parent tract acreage, 2 acres maximum. Cottage homes, 15,000, also a 2 acre maximum. Lot sizes, we have no minimums and maximums for each of those. A density of 18 dwelling units an acre. Open space and buffers, the entire site would have to have 30% open space with 350 square feet per unit of common open space within that overall open space required. Common areas and site improvements have to be designed for the benefit of the community. An 8-foot buffer around the perimeter, platted in common open space. The setbacks as shown, 10 feet from a public street or 5 feet from a common area if it's not subdivided. And the interior setbacks are 5 feet from a property line or 10 feet between units if they're not subdivided. And other requirements, access would be from a private drive off of a public street. 2 parking spaces per unit. They can be within a common area. An amenity structure could be built within the common area. A pedestrian network is required, adequate space for garbage and recycling pickup, which is typically a big thing. And we would encourage low-impact development measures for stormwater. The beauty with a lot of these things is we can negotiate that through a conditional district zoning and I think get a really good product. And honestly, these design standards have been vetted probably more than any other design standards we use. We as a staff, we prepared rough designs to ensure that some of the parcels within the city could fit tiny and cottage homes on that. We also allowed a local architect who has infill and tiny home experience to look and provide feedback on the requirements. And back in March, we had these design standards out for public comment. Had very few, well, almost no negative comments. I've talked to a couple of developers who are wanting to move along with tiny home projects, and their response as well. They're really good design standards. We wish we didn't have to rezone, but we understand the reasoning behind it. So good feedback from all the parties involved so far. And we have a statement of reasonableness and consistency that the Planning and Zoning Commission adopted at their last meeting. And so your next steps Thursday night would be to consider the amendment, approve that statement of consistency or change it, and then adopt or deny the proposed ordinance change. Are there any questions?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Kevin, thank y'all for going back to the drawing board for us. For some folks out there that, Concord 101, this really helped us. One of the fears we had initially was that by right simply means that some parcels in our city could have just done a lot of mini homes or tiny homes, and that would have changed the characteristic of some of the older neighborhoods. Many, especially on my end of town, we have a lot of larger lots in neighborhoods, and, you know, if we made it by right, then that kind of scared me, and I think I really appreciate council wanting planning department to go back to the drawing board, and now we'll have a little bit more of a discretion of what goes where. So thank y'all for the hard work on that, and I really like this. And I love the fact that y'all got all the input from the architects too for that. One quick question I have though, and I don't think we need to change anything, but the trash receptacles, I've got a particular multi-unit dwelling in my neighborhood, and the entire front of the dwelling is filled with recycling bins and trash cans. And pardon my ignorance, but are there required buffers for hiding those? In other words, can you just put, if you had 6 units, could you just line all those, that would be 12 receptacles across the front of the property? I mean, is there any kind of shading or something that's required for when that receptacle's not at the road, for example?
There is not. I mean, there obviously we have the codes that require them to be taken off the road on the days that they're not there. But the good thing about a conditional district zoning request is we can work on things like that during the site plan process and make sure those things are covered on the site plan.
Okay.
On a case-by-case basis.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Mayor, if I may, I just wanted to ditto a lot of what Brian just said, but also I think this is just a great example of you coming back to us, the planning department coming back to us with something that really has got concrete going forward. Where the infill scenarios have always been a sort of a challenge, I think, and what we were going to do and what was going to look like and could be built on. I think this solves a lot of that now. I think there are people waiting in the wings to get this done. So thank you for your hard work.
Kevin, can you go back to the slide, I think before the background slide, I think, wait, go forward. Okay, go one more forward. Okay. All right, okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Kevin, is the entire downtown inset, is that considered an urban neighborhood?
Most of downtown is in a mixed use.
Yeah, it's orange.
Downtown mixed use. No, the downtown is not.
So you could not do one of these projects anywhere in the MSD?
There are some areas off of Corbin Avenue, a couple of parcels that may be in urban neighborhood. Right, correct. And if if there's an instance where there's a rezoning that's necessary, you do concurrent land use plan amendment. Also, correct, yes, and I would see that happening in some instances.
So in other words, you have to have 2 rezonings. You have to rezone and then rezone.
No, it would just be the rezoning would come to planning commission along with the concurrent plan amendment, and they would refer it to you for final decision with the rezoning and the land use plan amendment. Right.
Jennifer, you have a question?
So I have a question. Kevin, most of these are probably 1 and 2 bedroom, I'm assuming, on the tiny homes. So if I'm doing my sewer calculation, because, I'm always there, of the 4, we're going to be right at 600. So I think just, thinking about that yes, this is not the magic tick to affordability, but I think that's another advantage as well, that if you're sticking with the 4 units, it's going to come in under the 600. And so again, just kind of, making that a little bit easier from that perspective. Question piggybacking off of that would be, is there a difference between if I came in as a developer and did 5 lots versus each individual lot versus, is that considered a neighborhood as far as submission goes from a sewer perspective? So if I'm selling them each individually and my sewer is 150 versus doing all of those and platting them on one piece would be over the 600. Is that correct?
It'd just be one project. I mean, the units
Okay.
are the units.
So the
that are
project,
sold
even if
or-
I'm selling them individually, would just be like a single family that, okay, just wanted that clarification. Thank you.
It's like a subdivision, regular subdivision.
Okay, other questions? All right, Kevin, thank you very much.
Sure, I'll pick it up afterwards.
Before we move any further into petitions and requests, I've had some conversations about moving an item from the consent agenda. JC, you wanted to move an item?
Thanks for catching me off guard, Bill.
Yep.
I don't remember which item
I
it
think
is.
it was N as in Nancy, right?
In consent, in on the political
All right.
partisan.
So we will move in to as item 9.
I'll second that.
Well, we actually, we went and looked at our rules, and we can have a motion, or we can just do it based upon each council's input. So we'll just go ahead and make the move.
When will we discuss that, Mr. Mayor?
Do what?
When will we discuss that item?
At the end, after number 9, actually, it's number 10 now. Well, that is how we're doing this. Okay. So petitions and requests. Consider authorizing city manager to execute a contract with MH Graves Construction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Calling Andy, Deputy Transit Director, to discuss this item, council.
Thank you, Mr. Payne, Mayor, members of council, Ms. Kolchinsky. This is our first phase of construction in our ongoing bus stop amenities improvement program. Ultimately, in this phase, there will be 19 bus stops approved or improved, 14 of those sites in Concord, 5 in Kannapolis. We are looking at improving ADA compliance at each stop, sidewalk connectivity, updated infrastructure, and the addition of amenities. We had a bid opening, the first bid opening in July. We only received 1 bid, so per procurement policy and procedure, we put it out to bid again. We got 1 bid that time in September. The only and the low bid, the most responsive bid, was by MH Graves Construction Company out of Charlotte, and their total all-in cost is $397,991. And that's actually well below the engineering estimate, which we were pleasantly surprised at. That one came in just above $460,000. We have federal FTA funding in place to cover 80% of the cost, leaving 20% to be split by Concord and Kannapolis. The resulting dollar amount for Concord will be $39,799.10. And the Transit Commission heard this item at their August meeting, and they gave us approval for recommendation to council so long as it did not exceed the engineer's estimate. So we're asking for your approval for the contract, and I'll take questions.
All right, any question from council? Yes, sir.
So this is for 19 new bus stops. We
19
have how many-
existing
Yeah,
bus
and
stops, yes, sir.
How many stops do we have in the city?
Right now, we have 266 stops.
And what is your ultimate vision of how many locations may move in this direction?
Ultimately, under this project, we would like to see, we have a goal of 30% being amenitized. Right now, we are right at 10%, which is industry standard. This first phase would put us at about 17%, so the upcoming phases would move us towards 30%.
Thank you. Other questions? All right. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Number 2, consider awarding a bid and authorizing city manager to execute a contract with Broadlink.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Call on Bethany to come forward to talk about this item.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, Mr. Payne and Ms. Kolczynski. This item, we are asking for consideration to enter into a contract with Broadlinks Telecom to provide services for installation, construction, and maintenance on our fiber optic network, not to exceed $400,000 over the remainder of the fiscal year. And these costs are already included, approved in the FY24 budget and approved CIP projects. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
And just to confirm, this is our infrastructure.
Correct.
Thank you, for the city. Questions? All right, thank you very much. Number 3, consider authorizing city manager and staff to move forward with the bidding process to renovate Marvin Caldwell Park.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Call on Sheila to come forward and provide the staff report on this project and the status of it. Sheila?
Mayor, members of council, Mr. Payne, Ms. Kolczynski, and Ms. Deason, if she's listening. Tonight, Parks and Recreation will present the final design map for the Marvin Caldwell Park. Staff continues to work with the consultant from Benish on permitting, splash pad design, splash pad permitting, athletic field lighting, and finishing the playground vendor interviews. In September, council approved the splash pad equipment purchase and approved to move forward with final design and permitting for the splash pad. On this slide, you will see the adopted master plan for Marvin Caldwell Park. The plan was adopted in June 2020, and based on the public input process, items identified from the master plan process include a new inclusive playground, 2 new covered basketball courts, 2 new basketball courts near the tennis shelter. They were requested to move the Robert Mathis Amphitheater near the Daniel Farr Building, new Logan Optimus shelter, resurface the tennis courts, expand parking, provide space for a community garden, and a new splash pad. A few of the amenities just mentioned for this project received significant funding from 2 grant sources, PARTF and LWCF. Combined, the total for the grants were $898,960. On this slide, you will see highlighted the amenities that's a part of the PARTF grant. The total for this grant is $400,000. The amenities include Irish Buffalo Creek Greenway within the park, splash pad, and the Logan Optimus shelter. The deadline for completion for this grant is to complete, this is LWCF. It's a new playground, 2 covered basketball courts, a small diamond, and a multi-purpose field. This grant was $998,960. Now PARTF. This grant was for $400,000, and it covered the Irish Buffalo Creek Greenway, the splash pad, and the Logan Optimus shelter. Together with both grants are at the center of the park and identified some major amenity improvements for Caldwell Park. On this slide is the final map for the design for Caldwell Park. During the public update meeting, citizens requested and asked if the project could be phased. It is our recommendation to close the entire park for the renovation. The time for the closure would be about 12 to 18 months. It could take less time, but would depend on weather. The renovation spans the entire park is the reason for the request for the closure. We do have 4 items that were changed from the adopted plan to the final design plan. The first change was for the greenway. The greenway was originally planned to go the length and along the creek line, but due to our environmental assessment and bank erosion, we had to reroute the greenway to go around the large field at the end of the park. So if you notice, the greenway will circle that back around to then continue upstream. The next change is due to the same issue, which is the erosion of the bank. We originally, on the original master plan, it was the large baseball field, the small baseball field, and then the multipurpose field. But due to the bank erosions, we had to switch the small field with the multipurpose field in order to stay away from the bank and still allow for spacing for the greenway. The third item that is going to be not changed, but not a part of the original bid, is the parking lots that will be located off of Melrose and located off of Lincoln. The parking lots were added later after the bond funding was identified. The fourth item that was changed from the original master plan, originally we had a vehicle access road providing connectivity around the Daniel Farr building, connecting the parking lot to the lower parking lot. Due to tree saving, topography, and spacing of the amenities, this road now is going to be an emergency access road and for pedestrians, not vehicle access. And that location is, you'll see it on the back side of the Daniel Farr building going to the new parking lot. Sorry, it went. Some key call-outs for this master plan based on the changes and the amenities that were identified in the adopted master plan. The Robert Mathis Amphitheater will move next to the Daniel Farr building as requested by the public input. The Logan Optimist Shelter is moving to the center of the park and will need to be raised out of the floodplain. All athletic fields will have lights. The new basketball courts will not have lights. The new tennis courts will not have lights. The restroom building at the playground splash pad will have 4 family-style restrooms. 1 will have an adult changing table, and it will also be raised out of the floodplain. The concession building and existing amphitheater will be removed. Lights, the splash pad will be new, and it'll be over 4,000 square feet. The new inclusive playground stays at its original location. The existing playground that is still there, still has life on it based on our playground inspections, will be moved down to the tennis court shelter, and the park will now have 2 playground locations. The covered basketball court down between the multipurpose field and a large field will be 2 regular-sized basketball courts with a cover. And the 2 basketball courts will also be moved up next to the tennis court. We will also add additional parking at the Daniel Farr building. We will renovate the existing tennis court, shelter, and restrooms. We will provide space for a new community garden. We will add approximately 2 miles of trails and greenways within the park. The total parking spaces now at Caldwell is 81. We will increase parking by 68 spaces, bringing the total to 149. Currently, there's only 3 accessible spaces at Caldwell. We will increase that by 14, bringing the total to 17. On this slide, you will see the design for the new Robert Mathis Amphitheater. It'll be tiered seating with a wall on the stage with an opening at the back for performers. We will have electricity on the stage and at the back in the seating area to provide accommodations for performances. The design for the Logan Optimist Shelter. The roof will be rib-seam metal. The size is 40 by 40, which is the same size of the current shelter. It will have a stone veneer base and poles wrapped in hardy plank, which is like a fiber cement. The design for the new restroom building. It'll be 4 family-style restrooms, with 1 again having the adult changing table, a storage room, and an equipment room for the splash pad. Similar to the Optimist Shelter, the roof will be rib-seamed, stone veneer base, and poles wrapped in hardy board, which is a fiber cement. The tennis court shelter. It will keep the same roof elevation. It'll be replaced with the rib seam metal roof. We will be adding awnings over the existing restroom doors. We will upgrade the fixtures in the restroom and refresh the paint to match the other buildings. And here are all 4 new buildings for you to review. Updated 3D rendering, looking back at the Logan Optimus Shelter, the multipurpose field, and covered basketball courts. Our next steps will be provide this update for the park at the October 23rd Logan Neighborhood Meeting, and again, November 1st at Caldwell Park, 5:30 to 7:30 for the citizens. If council desires to table the vote until November to allow for the completion of the public update meeting, staff will continue to work on permitting and the construction documents needed for bidding until council approves to move forward. If staff receives any concerns during the update meeting, we will communicate to council. The total bond funding for this project is $10,146,143. That's just bond funding. The total project cost is $11.5 million. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Question from council.
I just like,
Go ahead, Betty, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Betty.
Mine's real quick. Back to the grants. You went through that so quickly, I'm not sure I understood the grants on this. What are they funding and how much were they again?
Okay?
And is that part of
The
the?
first is LWCF, and it's funding the inclusive playground, the covered basketball courts for 2,
Okay.
the small baseball diamond, and the multi-purpose
How
field.
much was that one?
That one for LWCF is $498,960.
That's it?
960, yes.
Close enough, all right. And the next one?
And next one is Partif, and that's $400,000. And that covers the new it covers the Greenway, the splash pad, and the Logan Optimus Shelter. Together, they cover, the total for both grants together is $898,960.
I heard you say 998. Is there another one?
No.
Okay, what was
It was
998?
898.
So a 998 was I misunderstood.
I may have
Okay,
misspoke, I'm sorry.
misheard you. So 2 grants at 898. Question, is that over and above the quote-unquote budget for this park? Or is that included into the bond?
Well, grant funding is not included in the bond. It will help cover the difference between the requested, the 10 million, which is the cost for bond, which includes design, to get to the 11.5, which is the total cost for the project.
Includes those grants?
Yes.
11.5?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha, okay.
So where does the rest come from?
I did not speak, I was next.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Betty.
First of all, Sheila, thank you and your staff for putting and working on this particular plan. Right now, I'm thinking I'm going to reach out to the Farr family and see if I can buy a lot across the street and build a tiny house. So I can just walk across the
That's a good
street
idea.
to the park with all these great amenities that's coming. And also, there are a few Logan residents here, and thank you for noting that you will be going back and providing updates at the October meeting and then the additional.
And the November 1st meeting will be in the park,
In
just
the
in
park.
case people have questions and need me to show and they need to see.
Yeah, and so, we've exchanged a couple emails, at least council and Lloyd, over the last couple of days. And so my reason for wanting to ask council to table this vote until the November meeting is so that you can present these updates to the general Logan body community association meeting, so that we're all on the same page.
Understood.
I don't see any issue. I think there will be any issues or real concerns. I mean, it's a great plan, so
Thank you.
that for clarity, that's my reason for wanting to table the vote until November. It's only 2 weeks after, or maybe a week and a half after the meeting, so.
We can continue to do the permitting during that time, so the project would not be paused with that request.
Okay, thank you.
Lloyd, go ahead, Andy.
So, thank you for all this. It really is going to be a wonderful project. My only anxiety, and Betty, I'll be glad to support the 1 month delay. What I want to be clear about in my own mind is this is for, I think the language you use, public information. We are not negotiating redoing any of this.
It's update only.
It's update only, because my big fear is if every time we get one of the park plans, is every time somebody raises an issue, we put it off by a month, or we put it off by a month. And that scares me to death. That, again, it affects the cost of the project. In this case, it affects possibly the cost of the additional projects that are coming along. And we have a budget for this, and if every month we wait, the cost goes up. That needs to come out of this project. But again, I want to be clear, we're not negotiating redoing all of that. Again, this is, and I think Betty said that, this is for public information to make sure they understand where we are, that you're proceeding with the necessary things, so this does not throw off our construction schedule. Because if we start slowing down every one of these, we're going to be in serious trouble. So anyway, that's just my thought. So again, it's a good thing. I'm willing to wait for a month, but then I really want us to move forward.
Thank you, Andy. Brian?
So I was just, a little math, I guess there's another $500,000 for the total project if you have the grant. So where is that coming from?
We have
And also, what was the original budget when we
bond funding,
budgeted?
7.2 bond funding. And
Okay, so
we're at
that's
10. We're
3 million over.
3.8 million over budget.
Okay.
Now, council approved in September.
3.8 million from the 11 or without the grant?
Bond funding, because see, we have grant funding and we have our matches that we already have in the budget for the grant funding.
Okay, so if it's 11.5, that's what I wanted to, 11.5, and we budgeted 7, the original budget was 7 something.
7.2.
7.2.
I can tell you exactly.
Okay, so that's the difference. Okay, so some of that is coming from grant funding, right?
Some of it will be grant funding, some of it will be our match to the grants when we applied for it. That's not bond funding, and then bond funding. And the second piece of it is when you guys approved the splash pad equipment in September, that is helping us reduce cost because now we don't have to pay the markup from the contractor. I'm keeping the estimate at the original cost because until we bid it, I don't know what that will be. And I'd rather prepare you guys for the original cost estimate that we received from the cost estimator until I know.
Yeah.
But the hope is, same as the playground, our goal is to purchase that through us, not the contractor, so we do not have to pay an upcharge.
So, but where is the difference coming from, Lloyd?
I'm not sure I'm doing the same math that you're doing. I mean, we can get you back numbers, more definitive numbers between now and Thursday, but I didn't know that you wanted this information, or I would have had it.
Well,
for you
I just,
tonight.
I mean, if we're, yeah, okay, it's just, I don't know. I just want to make sure before we approve a project,
As we move forward, we did cost estimates for the $60 million that the citizens approved. And with that, that was 3 years ago. So now there are inflation costs that are coming in. So we are doing our best to reduce that anywhere we can so we can reduce that 3.8 million.
what amount did we put in the contingency for the bond? We budgeted contingency in the bond, right?
I placed at least 20 to 30%
Okay.
contingency, and we're trending about 40 to 50%.
Okay, well, where is that money going to come from?
Well, the plan is we will continue doing the park projects until the money runs out. And when the money runs out of the bond, we're going to come back to city council and ask, do you want to continue doing these projects? when the 60 million runs out, it's out. I mean, we can't help where
Well,
the inflation
when
is.
when we asked the citizens to vote on the bond, we told them that we were going to do specific things in the bond in people's different neighborhoods. And I'm all for this park project here. But I just also want to make sure that we're being very clear right now that when it runs out, it runs out. And I don't know that, like, are we going to tell somebody that's on the end of the line that, oh, sorry, we ran out of money? I mean, are we going to do that?
I think at that time, if
Need to
we're
have
out of
that
money
discussion
and
now.
And
If-
again,
if the bond money is out and there are still projects remaining, then that's a council decision to either go back for another bond or fund it out of general fund or take the debt service to do it. Yes, we asked the voters to fund 60 million, which they did, but over a period of 7 to 10 years to build projects, we can't control the inflation for that. We did build in inflation in the projects, but we can't control the cost of equipment, material, or construction over that period of time. So there's no way to guarantee that we're going to do everything in that we promised for $60 million without having to come up with some additional funds.
So the question I have then is, would we do a little bit everywhere, or do we just do a lot in a few places and then just run out of money? I'm asking council what they think about that. I mean, I'd love to do everything, but I just want to have this conversation now.
my goal is to address all the approved master plans based on the funding that you have provided me. And communicate anytime that it's over.
I agree with what you're saying, but we're dealing with an estimate. So let's get the bid in. It may be 5 million over. It may be 2 million. And then we do need to address it. I do agree with you. We don't need to wait till we get down to Wilson and Flo and just say, we're out of money, we can't do those. So I think we've got another conversation to have once Sheila gets her bid in and we know exactly what the pain really is. But I do have some other just questions.
Are you through? Are you okay?
I just, I guess when I hear that it's coming in at a certain amount, I thought maybe we do have the estimates. So maybe I'm just misunderstanding that.
Not a bid estimate, just the estimate.
Bid.
The estimate.
You've got to do the
Okay.
bid.
Yeah, bid estimate's totally different, Brian.
So, okay.
Yeah. The only, Mike, and I believe you in what you're saying. I hear you loud and clear that this is something we've not discussed, obviously, and we discussed it when the bonds, we're talking about bonds. In fact, it may come up in the discussion we're about to have later on in this meeting, but when it runs out, it runs out. I don't know that the general public right now understands that. That's my issue. I don't think they do, by the way. And I think, and you're doing your job. Trust me, you're doing a good job with it, too. You're doing what you asked to do. You've been asked to bring to us the pricing and then at some point in time, once we get to it, the bidding, of the actual construction of this. My concern is the first 3 of them are going to eat up a whole big chunk, Jim Ramsar particularly, because it's sitting at 20 million, as we said here now, 23. And if it's a 50% increase on your contingency above that, we're probably eating up our bond funds, close to it anyway. And, you know, I'm not an expert at that, I'm just giving you my opinion. So we need to be very honest and upfront with the public on where we are on this and where it possibly could go. That's all I'm saying, and I agree with you on that, so.
JC.
A few specific questions from the plan we've approved to this one.
Right.
So the plan we approved had a roundabout and had a realignment.
The roundabout was not, that's up there, that was for transportation. It was not a traffic improvement that was required.
So we're not doing the roundabout?
sir.
We're not realigning?
No, sir.
Fairway.
It'll be just a T or a cross.
Right. The multipurpose field, is that grass or turf?
Grass and lit.
And what?
Lit, how we'll have
Oh,
lights.
lit. Okay.
We'll have one.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, Bill, can I ask you, are you done, Jason?
No. No. How many total restrooms?
It'll be four family at the, splash pad. We will continue the gang-style, restrooms at the tennis court shelters, but increasing the restrooms. And we still have the restrooms at the Daniel Farr.
3 different restrooms.
Correct.
Interesting.
Do you want to
JC,
jump
are
on?
you sure?
Are you sure? All right.
Carry.
Just last question. Value engineering, has it come into play? Obviously, to this point, are we done?
No, the
Okay.
first piece of the value engineering was when we brought to you the splash pad.
Okay.
Equipment and design and permitting, in September for this project.
Okay.
Because now we don't have to pay 20 to 30% increase on the
Because the
equipment to the contractor. We will supply it, he will just install it.
Will that be the case going forward? I mean, we're going to make that a process as you hope?
My goal is to save as much money that we can save where I can save it.
Okay.
I will say, Terry, your point, yes, value engineering will always be a part of this, with the disclaimer that that will need to come back to council, because when we value engineer,
Right.
that may involve taking out amenities that the public input process that we're all aware of said that they wanted at a specific park. So we would want to bring that back to council to say, you know, it's over by how much ever. You know, the lowest request perhaps on the list was item X. We would recommend that we remove that, value engineering the project. So that would come back to council, just like the final design is for approval. So we won't be doing that at staff level without your final say.
Yeah, well, I hate to keep bringing it, but once we approve this, we're done. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's the plan now, as council stated over the past couple months in discussions we've had with the Dorton Park.
Right.
We're bringing the final design to you. That's the presentation that you see, along with the changes from the approved master plan with the public input. So now we will go back out to the Logan Homeowners Association, have the meeting in Caldwell Park. So that's two opportunities for the public to come out and get an update on what we're doing. We will come back to you in November and ask at that time for council to approve it. Once you approve that final design, we're on the way to take this project out to bid.
Got it.
Yes, sir, John.
Just briefly, it's a great project. I'm glad it's at the top of the list. It's going to be phenomenal when it's done. On the grants, talking about that, are they locked in or do they sunset?
There are deadlines. We can file an extension, but I think on our current timeline, we should be okay. I think we're going to have to apply for an extension on LWCF. The goal for LWCF is to be completed by August 2024 for all the amenities you see for LWCF. And for PARTF is January 2025. But each grant, it will allow for an extension if we apply. But it's not guaranteed. No, sir. But as long as we are moving forward and we're not waiting for construction, then we have a good chance of getting it. If we're not moving on it at all, we have the opportunity to lose it.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
And I've got one more. The grants, you said that we had to match those.
Correct.
Does that come out of bond funds, or do we?
No, sir.
Okay, so can it come out of bond funds?
Well, you've already approved those matches, so it's
Right.
already in the budget
Understood.
balance.
Understood. Did we increase the scope of the park after the grant, or did we try to use that to offset the cost of the project?
No, sir.
No, sir. Which one?
We did not use that money to increase the amenities at the park.
Okay. That's just a very big increase. And I love the project, by the way. I'm just very concerned because you were talking about even taking one amenity out of one project, but suppose we take a whole park out of some neighborhoods that we promised in the future. I mean, I'm not smiling about that. It's a very serious matter, I believe. And
Understood.
I want people to know what's happening if we go way over budget on all these parks, because we don't have to.
Okay, any more comments?
I have one.
Jennifer?
So Sheila, just for point of clarification and following up in John's, if we do this 30-day, that is not going to impact our grants one way or the other?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I will allow me still, because we're not ready to bid tomorrow.
That's fine.
It allows me to finish with permitting and get things in place to be ready to bid in November as soon as you guys give me the green light.
I have a couple comments, and one is I'm going to piggyback off of Andy, and I agree 1,000%. I'm hesitant on the delay, but at your request, Betty, I'm good with it, with the knowledge of, like, this is an update meeting. It is not an input meeting, because we're still kind of unpacking other things where I think that got a little misunderstood. So I'm with Andy on that. I'm also going to piggyback on what Brian said. I think we got to have a serious conversation about stretching this money and what that looks like, because I am uncomfortable not touching every park. That's just me personally in some way. And we need to, it's only fair to you guys at staff level to let them know that if that's our goal, that we need to identify that sooner rather than later. So that's kind of my second piece of it. And then, is it possible, so I know you can spill this off like in your sleep, but I can tell you that like even as you're reading it and I'm trying to follow it here and I'm like, is it possible for us to get a, like, this was proposed, these are the, like you have on here, just these are the 4 things that were changed? Because I think it's really important for us to be singing from the same sheet of music too, that if we get, you know, a call, we've gotten a couple of those, we've gotten a couple emails. So if we get that in the future, then we're sharing the same information, and then maybe that could be in a nice little PDF format that's on the website as well. Just so we know, like, we can guide the citizens to this point, we can do this, we can do that. And it's very clear on the changes, because I love how you did, even on here, of the diamond field has to be moved due to bank erosion. Because I think sometimes what we've seen, especially in the last 30 days, is that people think we make decisions just because we feel like that's the right thing to do. And there really is a lot of times something that's undergirding that and why we had to make the change. And so I think that's important information to be not only shared in a public meeting, but to be something that's tangible that we can constantly share with the public. So that would be my request. And I guess that probably needs to go more on the Lloyd level than that, but I think that would be super helpful.
Okay, JC.
And I've got to add on to that. And this may be impossible to do, but it would be nice to have some sort of a split screen where you could see the original and see the change, so there's no confusion.
I will do that in November for you.
Listen, I took
I mean, for the update meetings.
I printed both of them and looked at them, and it's still
Difficult.
hard to do. So I
Yep.
think the bullet points would be, yeah, it is. It's hard to see changes.
And I missed one item. On the original plan, it was very clear that that one parking lot was food trucks. And this plan doesn't spell out a food truck lot. Did that go away?
No, sir. We will have electricity at the Logan Optimus shelter along the driveway, and it's multi-purpose. That way, it's not just food truck. It can be cars when there's no food trucks there.
Show that up. Show that to me, please.
If you see the roundabout,
It's not there.
let me get to the
Go
original.
to
Let
it.
me get to the original plan.
There you
All
go.
right, you see where the Logan Optimus shelter is? Yes, sir. It's, yeah, the other side. We will have electricity right there against the curb for the food trucks.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm done.
Are you sure? Okay. Any other questions?
That'll be nice. Those generators are loud.
Yes. And we learned they burn bushes.
So what is our process? If Betty has asked us to delay the final decision by 1 month, what is our process? Since this is on our,
I
we
don't see
table
any
it
problem
at
with
Thursday?
having a motion right now to, Betty, you want to make a motion to, not to table, but to delay?
It's a table.
A table? To table the vote.
Until the
Yeah,
November,
okay.
regular
Correct.
scheduled November meeting.
Right.
Okay, I motion that we table the vote to move forward with the bidding process for the bond-funded renovations to Marvin Caldwell Park as identified in the final design documents until the November regular council meeting.
I'll second that.
We got a motion and a second. Ready to vote? All in favor, raise their hand. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Now we're moving to item 4, consider authorizing city manager and staff to approve the final design for J.E. Jim Ramsewer Park.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Calling George to come forward. This is another exciting park project that we have. This one is not a redesign or a renovation, but a brand-new park in the western part of the city that is devoid of a lot of park and recreation opportunities. So, George, if you would provide the update to council, please.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council, Mr. Payne and Ms. Kolchinsky. This afternoon, I would like to provide you with an update on the design of the new 28-acre J.E. Jim Ramsewer Park, which will be located at 1252 Cox Mill Road, immediately north of Cox Mill Elementary School. And on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Department, we ask that the council authorize the city manager and staff to proceed with final permitting and approvals and to proceed with the bid stage at the earliest possible opportunity. Based on the recommendations from the 2016 Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan and City Council strategic goals, a new community park for the northwest region of the city was prioritized, and the current site was identified and purchased. Public input was gathered in 3 surveys with over 1,500 responses and a public workshop during 2020. Using that information, staff and our design firm Wolpert prepared a detailed master plan that was initially adopted by council in August of 2021. The master plan featured 6 pickleball courts and a shelter, a splash pad, a large open lawn space and amphitheater, multiple playgrounds, small and large dog park areas, basketball courts, restrooms, pavilions and shelters, an outdoor environmental education area, greenway trail and significant walking trail and sidewalks, vehicle parking, a maintenance building, and vehicular connections to both Cox Mill Road and the driveway entrance with Cox Mill Elementary School. The master plan also featured an approximately 40,000 square foot recreation center. However, in May 2022, the council adopted a revised master plan, removing the recreation center from the current phase of Ramseur Park, citing cost considerations. The recreation center was placed into a future phase category to be constructed as funds became available after the current bond program was completed. The final site plan has now been developed by Wolpert, and we are now in the process of having construction drawings completed and approved by the city and the county, having state permits approved, finalizing the sewer easement with the Highland Creek HOA, and having the roadway improvements to Cox Mill Road designed for approval by NCDOT. Only one change has been made from the revised master plan. The environmental education area has shifted further west on the property. You can see it, well, maybe you can see it. It's number 10 in the upper left on the site plan. So the upper leftmost bullet or dot there, that's the new location. Placing it adjacent to the wetland and providing easier access to the county-owned Soil and Water Conservation District property north of the project site. All other park features and amenities remain in the same general locations as they were on the approved master plan. Final site plan amenities include those shown on the slide in front of you. 6 pickleball courts, a 3,700 square foot splash pad, open lawn spaces and an amphitheater, 3 playgrounds, dog park areas, 2 basketball courts, 3 sets of restrooms, 6 shelters, an outdoor classroom space, trails and greenway, including the provision for the future bridge across Clark Creek as part of that greenway project, a maintenance building that will be staffed full-time by the Buildings and Grounds Department, and 272 vehicle parking spaces and 10 handicap accessible parking spaces. Now I'd like to show you some renderings and design features of the park. This slide is a rendering of the 6 pickleball courts, covered spectator seating, the restroom building to the east of the courts, and the construction elevation for that building is at the bottom right on this slide, and the open lawn area. A notable feature of this area of the park is that there will be decorative panels on both the gate to the pickleball play area and the surrounding fence, an environmental art theme that is carried over to the splash pad restroom and pavilion. Another significant feature of the park is the splash pad pavilion and restroom building, one unit of which will have an adult changing table. This pavilion is centrally located in the park and will be available for open use by individuals and families, differentiating it from the 5 other shelters scattered in the park, which are planned to be reservable. Again, you can see the decorative steel panels that will be on the east side of the building. The base of those panels is also a planter bed to provide additional color and texture to the building. All of the significant structures in the park will be clad in a combination of high-density fiber cement siding panels, architectural masonry, and glass where appropriate, with coated galvanized metal roofing material. The color palette will be similar to what you see here on the slide. Natural sand or off-white concrete materials, graze for the fiber cementitious panels, and sealed unpainted wood underneath the roofs. The theme for the splash pad at Ramsar Park is Mountain Stream. As you can see here and on the next two slides, there are structural gateway water features at each end of the mountain stream motif that the concrete surface material suggests, and numerous tree, leaf, log, and rock structures that are water features throughout. The west end of the splash pad's mountain stream leads a park visitor to the playground section of the park, and there are 3 distinct types of playgrounds with 4 actual areas of play, all of which reflect a design that features, a woodland natural theme. Each of the next few slides has a key in the top right corner with a red star indicating where that playground is located in relationship to the splash pad, which is indicated with the orange rectangle in the key map for clarity. The traditional playground is geared toward children ages 2 to 5 with basic equipment, encouraging growth, development, and play suitable for this age group. Also in this slide and the next, you can see the 2 yellow 9-foot elevated, 10-foot long, flush-mounted hillside slides that facilitate a different way to get from one level of the playground to another. And if you're straining to see it, those are the 2 yellow features that you can see on this slide, but you can also see it better in the next slide. There you go. The next 3 slides illustrate the adventure playgrounds located on the lower tier as the park slopes down toward the Clark Creek floodplain. The first slide shows the main playground feature, a play fort with several features, including a wheelchair accessible ramp to the top level, 2 slides, several touch play features, play panels, and multiple sets of ramps and stairs. This area also has an inclusive whirl and several other inclusive features for accessible play. The other section of the adventure playground is around the circle, which is a retaining wall from the first section, but on the same level. It is designed to be more challenging, but still safe. Think of the ropes course you may have tried up in the tree canopy, but this one is only a few inches or a few feet off the ground. The final section of the playground area at Ramsar Park is the nature playground. It is on the lowest level with mounds, hopper rocks, dunes, log balance beams, stumps, and a tree swing. All of these playgrounds use PIP rubber surface for safety and durability, and a motif that invokes the same woodland and mountain stream design. To reiterate, there's only been one change to the revised master plan. Due to the steep slope related to an intermittent stream at the north end of the park project, the environmental education area has been shifted further west, closer to the wetland and the wetland observation boardwalk. All the other park features and amenities are in the same areas as they were on the master plan. As provided to the council at the planning update meeting in September, the current cost estimate provided by the park's design firm is $21,044,420. We are currently scheduling a public information meeting for late in the first week or the second week of November to be held at Fire Station 9. With the council's authorization, staff will continue with the final approval process and then move forward with the bidding process prior to construction. Thank you, and Sheila and I will be able to take questions, any questions you have.
All right, questions? Yes, Terry.
This one's pretty close to the original budget then. This one's very close.
It's,
Within
the
300,000 or
original budget was
400,000.
19 million.
21, I think.
Yes, that's right.
21, that million was the original budget. You just said 21.4, didn't you?
That's right.
Yeah.
The original budget was 19.3.
I got 21. I'm looking at a 21 number for some reason.
10%.
But anyway, I'm sorry, I may have a different piece of paper, but I'm looking at
So the,
Estimated over budget on this?
1.7. Yeah, we're looking at the same thing.
it does. So there has been inflation on this park estimate. And again, the original estimates were produced in 2019, and of course, obviously, because of or as we heard in the discussion on the last item, inflation has driven all the estimates for all the parks as well as pretty much everything up. And we are hopeful to get to part of the discussion from the earlier conversation. We're hopeful that we might end up with something more similar to what we found out in the bid process for Dorton Park, which was actually under the bid. Can't count on that certainly, and of course, we don't count chickens, but.
Other questions?
I was trying to say, the facts that we were given included the overage of over budget at 1.7, 19 originally, but the numbers we were given, we got in front of us 21 million, so we're real close to the overage. That's right. Not some exuberant number of 40% or something, right?
Yes, JC.
Yeah, and this is gonna be, don't mean this extreme, I'm gonna have trouble approving the contract for this park until we see the final number for Caldwell. And I know we're pushing Caldwell out, but we're gonna be, 50, 60% into our bond with these three projects. And if we wanna save money, we're gonna be out of places to try to save if we award Ram Sewer ahead of Caldwell, so.
And that's what I said earlier. I think these first three parks are gonna eat up a big chunk of that 60 million. And our conversations along this line, I think we need to deal with this pretty quickly and deal with it, so.
So after these two, we've got one more big one, and then that's it. So if we're gonna do some hard value engineering, it's gonna be these next three parks.
And this was, a little over 2/3 of the bond money here that we borrowed in the first tranche. So we were expecting these large projects up front. We wanted to get those done because we did think that they were the most impactful, being the larger projects as well. So we did factor that in.
Other comments? Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, consider authorizing, number 5, consider authorizing city manager to negotiate and execute a contract, Ground Thunder Construction Incorporated.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I asked Rick to come forward. Continuing the park theme this evening, this is not part of the general obligation bond park projects, but is a significant project and one that's been asked about by citizens for quite some time. So Rick, if you would.
Thank you. Mayor Dush, members of council, Mr. Payne, Ms. Kolczynski. Before you is the proposed construction of 4 pickleball courts, as you can see in the diagram. The project was bid on the formal bidding process. We received, it was bid on the 28th of September. We received 6 bids. Your council agenda item reads 4, it should be 6, which we received 6 bids. The lowest being $340,000, 634 with 36 cents. The original budget of the project was $160,000. Project is $180,634.36 over budget. Additional funding is going to come from savings from other park and recreation projects, as indicating in the budget amendment that is attached to this agenda item.
Would you repeat that last statement, please?
The budget amendment? Yes, this agenda item has 2 portions, right? The approval of the construction of the pickleball courts and also to approve the attached budget amendment.
Can I speak, Bill?
Yes, go ahead.
No, I heard you say that we were gonna make up the differential on this one from savings of the other parks? They're all over.
Not other parks, other projects,
Okay.
parks and recreation projects.
Gotcha.
Savings
Okay,
from other projects that have already been completed.
I got you. Okay,
And there was
understood.
money left over in those projects.
Hope this is an indication of the bidding going for the next parks. Other comments?
This is, just for clarification, this is not part of the bond, this is
No, it's
just.
not.
Yeah, just making sure, okay. And, there's, without, Les Myers Park, this portion of Les Myers Park is in our future, correct? There are parts of this park that we have begun to close and not replace lighting but we're okay with this part of the park?
Correct.
Having more investment in
We
that
are
park.
okay to do this type of construction. We cannot go down in the ground any.
Got it.
We can put impervious surfaces.
Yep.
And this is
As long as
also-
it's not covered.
Yeah, all this land to the northeast side of that is unusable, correct?
Yes, we're in the middle of environmental investigation right now.
Forever.
That is being directed by the state, and we don't have the final report on that one yet. So it's up to the state to let us know whether what we can do and we cannot do.
Okay. Any more questions?
I have one. Of the 340,000 plus, how much of that is the cost for the wall?
It's, I have the bill, excuse me. I'm looking at the bid tabulation to answer your question. $80,000.
No, it's,
What item number are you looking at? 3 times 11 is 60,000, I'm sorry.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Is item number 11 on the bid tabulation?
Okay.
Just to note, my fellow council members, that was the park I grew up playing in, and there aren't any bathrooms there.
No, there's they're locked all the time. And if you don't know, the issues we have here was because this was an old incinerator site.
That's right.
Back when I was a kid. That was a long time ago. All right. Any more questions? All right, thank you. Number 6, consider authorizing city manager to negotiate and execute a contract with Ground Thunder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Call on Sue to come and present this item to council this evening.
Yes, sir. Mayor, council members, Mr. Payne, Ms. Kolchinsky. This is asking for award of an approved capital improvement project, the equipment shed and restroom facility at Alfred Brown Center. We'd had good interest on this project, and the bids came in at $1,163,018.87, which is below estimate. And it would also be awarded to Ground Thunder, as in the previous item. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? All right, thank you very much. Number 7, consider authorizing city contract amendment with HDR Engineering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeff is going to come forward. He has items 7, 8, and 9 for council this evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Mr. Payne, Ms. Kolchinsky. Yeah, item 7 is authorization of a contract amendment with HDR Engineering of the Carolinas. HDR is the designer of record on the improvements at Hillgrove Water Treatment Plant, which generally includes our said basin repairs, our plate settler installation, as well as our GAC project, very large project for us. So we're asking that you allow us to add services to that existing contract for construction administration, project management, material testing, and special inspections. Again, almost 2-year project once we get started, so extensive engineering work during the project. That amount is $1,872,910.
Okay, question from council? No questions? All right. Number 8.
All right, number 8 is very similar. This is with Garver, who is the engineer of record on our chlorine room improvements and rehab at Cottle Creek Water Treatment Plant. So we're asking for a contract amendment to add construction administration, construction observation, material testing, and overall project management to the Garver contract in the amount of $153,413.24.
Questions from council? There are none. Moved on to number 9.
And number 9, consider reservation of the biannual true-up sewer allocation. If you remember, council did modify the sewer allocation policy in section 2F that allows council, if they choose, to reserve the biannual true-up until the following biannual true-up, I think with the intention of making sure we didn't have to give capacity back as we did this past year. So that number is 167,761 gallons per day. And that'll be up for you guys to decide if and how much you choose to reserve till the next true-up.
Okay, questions?
In January, we lost 80,000, like 80,000 and some change.
Yeah, the better side of it. Any more questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And number 10, it's item N that we moved over, Article 5.1, dealing with amending Article 5.1, political activities in the personnel policy.
So Bill, can I offer my thoughts?
Yes, please.
The reason I asked to remove it, first, I'm not opposed to the item as it's listed, but I've just been trying to think, why would we prevent any employee from running for any office? And I'll use some examples. Maybe we have a police officer that wants to run for sheriff. I don't see why we would prevent that. Obviously, if they are successful, they'd have to resign. You can't have two full-time jobs. We might have a lawyer that wants to run for district attorney or one of our judges. I would see if one of our employees wants to run for this council, they would also have to resign, even though it's not a full-time job. But and maybe I'm missing something, so that's why I wanted to take it off and discuss. I would let our employees run for any partisan, nonpartisan, whatever, and then deal with it if they won on a race-by-race basis.
Well, I agree with you. I was trying to think of the consequences or why some of our forefathers would have placed this. I mean, there's a reason why they did it, I'm sure, and I can't imagine why, but I do think that, to your point, I don't think we could handle it when it occurs. I think, like you said, I think somebody could run for something, but if they held that office, then that's a different story. Like you said, I mean, there could be conflict of interest there. So I guess if you were saying they could run for it, that's fine. But if they do obtain that office, which ones do we say yes and no to,
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I think there'd have to be a definite trigger because we wouldn't want to appear at some certain point to be singling someone out. We would have to have a policy in place that, you do have to.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
obviously, if another full-time job, you can't hold two full-time jobs. So you couldn't be an officer here and an officer in Kannapolis, for that matter. So you couldn't be the sheriff. And I could see a conflict of interest with an employee being on this board. So I think that one would be specifically, but if we have an employee that wants to run for it, I don't want to see them, leave our employment and then not be elected. So I think they would have to just understand, I can run for this office, but if you're elected and if you swear in, you no longer work for the city. But I don't have a whole lot of background on what I'm saying here.
So what you're saying is running versus getting elected.
Yeah, and I guess if let's just say, for example, you're elected to the state house and you're an employee here, I would imagine just by virtue of that job, you wouldn't be able to hold those two positions anyway. So would that be considered, is serving in the state house a full-time job? And I think we have moonlighting rules in our handbook, don't we, Lloyd? I mean, like, you can't have two jobs here.
Well, you can have secondary employment, but it requires something that your supervisor and the attorney and myself sign off on to make sure there's not a conflict of interest that exists.
So we already kind of have that covered in the policies where you'd have to sign off on it.
Yeah, it's from a conflict of interest, but it really doesn't cover, because, most of the elected positions, like at the state house, is not a full-time job. Most of those folks have a full-time job, but like the sheriff or district attorney, certainly, if you were going to run for those offices, that's a full-time job.
Right.
It would be a conflict as a secondary employment. They wouldn't have time to get their hours in here and be the DA or the sheriff at the same time.
But I also wonder, say, county commissioners, that's a part-time job. You could, but there seems to me to be clear conflicts of interest. I mean, there could be, when we've got to negotiate with the county commissioners, when we do things together with the county commissioners, which voice do they? Yeah, again, I don't know. I'm willing to do whatever.
Valerie, I have a legal question. Would a conflict of interest policy take care of that, right? Like, for instance, I mean, we have a conflict of interest policy, right? From that standpoint, and I'm just wondering, are we going down a road that's already somewhat covered? And I just would love for you to weigh in on that.
So
the answer to your question, to the specific question, is the ubiquitous, it depends. It depends on what the policy says, the specific language. So in order to analyze that, I would need to see it. We can, certainly take a look at something like that if that's what y'all want to do. I can also answer the why. This policy was put in place almost certainly because of the Hatch Act. It was put in place in order to keep the city in compliance with the federal law. That law changed some years ago. Chantel, do you know? I can't remember exactly when. It hasn't been a really long time, but some years ago that federal law did change so that folks who are being completely paid by federal funds, in whatever capacity, cannot run in partisan elections by federal law. So that's where it originated back sometime way before my tenure here.
That's not in effect now?
Now, it changed from a person who gets paid any amount of federal dollars cannot run in partisan elections to now the employee has to be completely paid in federal dollars. They're prohibited from running in partisan elections. I do think opening it up to the county commission and things like that, having an employee at the city serving on the county commission, I really see problems occurring with that. The school board, not so much, because we don't really interact with the school board, other than building schools, I guess, occasionally.
Well, two things. One, I think we're going to see possibly more of all of these races being partisan. And I'm just trying to address it at once. And I mean, I don't know, if one of our employees wanted to run for Kannapolis City Council, lives in Kannapolis, I don't see that as an issue. I don't really see the county, but.
I really think it could lead to some real conflict.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second part is, I don't want to hold up what we're doing with this, so I'm not trying to move this vote on the school board to next month or the month after. I'm quite fine with that. I just wanted to open it up. Are we dealing with the whole issue, or are we just dealing with one little symptom we've got here? And I think next year, we may all be partisan. I just don't see the difference of allowing people to sit on a partisan or nonpartisan in Cabarrus County today, so.
And the second part of your question was running versus getting elected and serving. So your point was they could run and not have to step down from their job, but if they get elected, they would have to.
I absolutely see our council, and if county commission is the same, then those two would be just listed that you would have to step down if you're elected.
Right.
But
Elected.
I really don't want, if someone's passionate about running for county commissioner, I'd like to see them run, but they need to know that if that's what this board says, is they'll have to step down. Then they're gonna get real passionate. We had a member of this board run for sheriff. So I don't know whether we're employees or not, so. I didn't know we had this.
But is that something are we addressing that at all now?
So and I'm not certain that I'm following exactly, but it sounds like the concern is that the council would like to allow a city employee to run for any partisan office, but if they win, they need to leave their employment with the city. We can certainly craft language if that's where we're going.
Right.
I thought we were talking about how we don't feel like school board would be a conflict of interest, so.
We're sort of got two things going here.
Yeah, so the school board thing, we've already gotten the language for you, right? That's on the agenda. But the next question that was raised is this difference, the dichotomy between not being allowed to even run. I mean, the way the policy is written now, if one of these employees sitting out here being so faithful to us goes down to the Board of Elections and puts their name in the hat, they have to quit.
No, well, that's how it's written, and that's why I'm saying that part.
If I can weigh in, Mayor, I would just recommend to council to, on Thursday night, to move forward with this item that council has all discussed. And then if council wants to move forward with going beyond that, I think I would like to have time to consult with the city attorney
Agreed.
and the human resources director, because I could see us needing to look at some of our personnel policy language as it's written now to ensure that we don't have employees who are running for office who are still employed by the city engaging in politicking or other types of things while they're on the job that would create personnel issues. So I want to make sure we've got language that would cover that, so we don't have employees around the water cooler, so to speak, campaigning and handing out campaign cards and things like that. Now that wouldn't be an issue because they'd have to resign. Not saying that's right or wrong. We just need to make sure we've got language to protect the city and the integrity of our workforce so that employees are not subject to politicking on the job, if you will.
So moving ahead with this case we have here, and then further discussion.
That would be my recommendation, and council certainly
Council
can
okay
do
with
as
that?
you'd like.
That's fine. I would also say too, we want to make sure it's not just politicking too, but like even if we move with the school board, if you have a Zoom call at 2:00, that is not on city time, right? Like, there's very clear delineated, like, I have that policy at work, right? So there's very clear delineated things that when I do one role and I do another role, and I'm not even governmentally tied, right? So while y'all are doing that, I would just say, and I think if we haven't discussed this, I think that's already in there, because I think we actually talked about that.
Yeah, we've had, as
thought so,
council
too.
knows, we've had multiple employees that have been in nonpartisan jobs or nonpartisan seats across the county in various positions in Mount Pleasant, the school board. And that has come up from time to time. You know, I've got an emergency school board meeting, or I've got a, town board meeting. And sometimes there's conflict that exists because if we've got a major issue that requires that employee's attention at that point in time, or an emergency occurs, now they've got a conflict. Do I get pulled away to go do this part-time elected job because we've got an emergency town board meeting, for example, or my employer who pays me has got it? So there have been those issues in the past where we've had to try to work around that, and sometimes that's easier said than done to work around an issue. Like if it's pre-planned, you can do that, but sometimes if an emergency occurs, it may be a little more difficult. So again, I think there's some HR, employee relations impact.
I agree, but back to your point, we've already had 2 employees that were on nonpartisan. I don't see any difference in partisan or nonpartisan. So however we dealt with the nonpartisan, same thing for a partisan. It's just, you gotta have a D or an R next to your name.
I think commissioner might be and I guess my question would be, Valerie, can we craft the language where it's all the cities and towns, but not that feels a little, shine the light bulb on us from a state perspective.
So Bill's suggestion, we'll vote on item 10 Thursday, and we'll have conversation.
And Valerie and HR will work together.
I mean, I think I'm now not exactly clear what the directive is.
We're just gonna talk about it later.
Yeah.
We're gonna vote on this Thursday as it's in.
Okay, and so you don't want me to start working on, okay, gotcha.
No, not yet. But this is just getting our thoughts out.
We got too many fish to fry right now. We'll deal with this later.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We are going to need a motion to go into a short closed session pursuant to NC General Statute 143-318, 11A, 3, and 4, in order to consult with an attorney to protect client attorney privileges and discuss the location, expansion of industries or businesses in areas served by this public body. Is there a motion? So moved. Second. All in favor, raise your hand. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you Thursday.